6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are live.
Yeah. Shall I start now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, friends. On behalf of Maharashtra Orthopedic Association, I welcome all of you for this MOA Foundation Week celebration. Today, we are having an eminent speaker, Dr. Deepak Maisekar, sir, retired Commissioner of Revenue from Pune and advisor to our Chief Minister Maharashtra. He is very expert in the administrative field and management field, and he will be guiding us on how to manage COVID-19, not in the hospitals, but on the streets, but in the community and in the society. As of today, I welcome also our President, Dr. Shinde sir, past President, Dr. Parag Sancheti sir, all past presidents of Maharashtra Orthopedic Association, all present and past office bearers of Maharashtra Orthopedic Association, all the members and all the ladies and gentlemen who have joined live for this program. I welcome all of you once again. As you know that this week celebration started from 1st May and now this is the 8th May. We are having this 8th program, and tomorrow we are going to conclude our week with the program of Shivani, BK Shivani, and I request our President, Dr. Shinde sir, to talk on this occasion and welcome all speaker and all. Dr. Shinde sir.
Thank you, Prakash. Good evening, friends. On behalf of Maharashtra Orthopedic Association, I welcome you all in this wonderful webinar. Before I begin, I would like to extend my healthy wishes to you all and your loved ones. We are celebrating 38th MOA Foundation Week, and this is our 8th webinar in the series. Win over second wave of Corona is our theme for this year, and today we are discussing role of each individual and entire community in the COVID-19 war. I welcome Honorary Dr. Deepak Govindram Maisekar to discuss the topic. Dr. Maisekar is presently working as an advisor to the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Chief Convener for Documentation of COVID-19, and Chairman State Environment Impact Assessment Committee. He is IS and was Divisional Commissioner of Pune Division in 2018 to 2020. We are at war with the COVID-19 pandemic. The casualties from this pandemic surpasses the war death that India has fought since 1947. India has lost more than 225,000 people due to COVID, and if we don't take this battle seriously at individual level in our houses, society and communities, we are likely to lose even more number of people. So let's hear what we can do. My best wishes to today's webinar. I hand over the mic to Dr. Parag Sancheti for his words regarding today's webinar. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Maharashtra, Jai MOA.
Thank you very much, Shinde sir. Good evening, everybody. Our chief guest and chief speaker for today's program, Dr. Deepak Maisekar, ex-divisional commissioner of Pune and current advisor to the Chief Minister for COVID pandemic. Our dynamic president, Dr. Ajit Shinde sir. Our coordinator for the MOA Day and MOA Week activities, Dr. Prakash Sigedar. Dr. Ashok Sham, Dr. Neeraj Bijlani from Ortho TV, Dr. Govind Shinde, Dr. Govardhan, Dr. Pramod Shinde, and friends. It's indeed a great pleasure for me to welcome Dr. Deepak Maisekar for this program. I think he's the very apt person to speak today and give us the guidelines on what we should do and what we should not do. Because when the whole pandemic broke last year, exactly about 14 months ago, he was the divisional commissioner of Pune. He has seen it through. He was directly, on the ground, fighting as a frontline person at that time. I still remember he used to be 18 to 20 hours in his office. He retired a few months later, but seeing his good role, his activities, the Chief Minister did not let him go and still continued to avail his knowledge, intelligence, and experience and made him the Chief Advisor for fighting the COVID pandemic. And today, I'm very happy that he's consented to agree to speak to us. He's a very busy person. Even today, he has another program after this. But Maisekar sir, thank you. And we look forward to hearing from you. I want to thank once again our dynamic president for the excellent activities. Sir, for last 1 week, the activities have been phenomenal and each and every program is worth listening. We will send you a recording of all the programs and that will be done next week, which will be put on the website also. And each program has really been in your theme, sir, to educate people for the COVID pandemic and how to save ourselves from that. With these few words, thank you, sir. I hand over the mic to our coordinator, Dr. Prakash Sigedar.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shinde sir and Parag sir, for your kind words and guidance. As the theme for this week was to win over the second wave of corona, we have planned the lectures accordingly. From 1st May, we have talk on vaccination, drug therapy, oxygen therapy, roll-up counseling, plasma therapy, and sir, how to go ahead with the COVID hospital, what are the problems of the COVID setup, and how to go do the surgical work in this pandemic. So all the topics were related to the second wave of corona. Now I formally introduce today's speaker, Dr. Deepak Govindrao Maisekar. He has done BBSc and AH from Bombay University and MUSc from Bombay University. He was gold medalist in that time. He has done the diploma in computer science as well, and he's LLB first class from Nagpur University. He has a command over many languages: Marathi, Hindi, English, German, and Russian. He entered into the government service as a class 1 capacity as a deputy chief executive officer, Jilla Parishad, and has worked in the various capacities as deputy CEO, project director, assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner, additional CEO. He was a municipal commissioner at Nanded from 2006 to 2010. Then he got selected for the IAS services in 2010 from non-state civil services. Then he has various assignments: deputy secretary, urban development, chief executive officer, Jilla Parishad Kolhapur, collector Chandrapur, chairman Nagpur Improvement Trust and Metropolitan Commissioner Nagpur, divisional commissioner Pune from 2nd May 2018 to July 2020. Presently, he is working as an advisor to the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Chief Convener for Documentation of COVID, and Chairman State Environmental Impact Assessment Commission. He has received many awards during his service also. As a Municipal Commissioner Nanded, he got first prize at the state level for solid waste management. He bagged the second prize for having stood at the national level for solid waste management and drinking water supply. He bagged first prize at the national level for efforts to make city slum free. He bagged the first prize at state and national level in Yashwant Panchayat Raj Abhiyan for outstanding work while working as a Chief Executive Officer, Jilla Parishad Kolhapur. He has worked as a member and chairman of many different committees on the government. So we have got such an experienced administrative person to guide us today on COVID-19 war, not only in the hospitals, but it should be taught in the houses, street, families, and in the community. If each and every one of community becomes aware of the problem of COVID, we are definitely going to win over the COVID. So without wasting much of the time, I request Dr. Deepak Maisekar to guide us on this topic. Dr. Maisekar, sir, please.
Good evening, everyone. The chairman of the Maharashtra Orthopedic Association, Dr. Shinde, Dr. Parag Sancheti, Dr. Prakash Sigedar. It's a pleasure to be associated with you all. I have been told that I may finish because I have a lecture next at 6:20, 6:25 I have to go. So I'm a bit rushing up because generally I give a lecture for more than 1 hour to 1 hour 5 minutes, but I'm trying to curtail it between 20 to 25 minutes. So I'll just rush through some of the history or past. I'll just rush through and straight away go to the COVID aspects. India, as you know, the first COVID case in India came in Kerala. I will not be going into earlier history. These were students, medical students coming from China who were found positive. the most important thing as far as COVID is concerned, since I'm rushing through, I'm just skipping some of the points, the historical points or otherwise. When this first case was seen in China, after that, the Chinese and Australian scientists studied the genome sequence of this particular virus. And this was more important and a landmark because based on this genome sequence, the vaccine development strategy started at that point. That was 12 January 2020. Once the genome sequence of virus was known, all the 47, 48 odd vaccine players that we are seeing now, they started, maybe some of them at a later point, but they did start their efforts to produce vaccine. It was on 11th of February. This virus was named as severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2 or SARS-CoV-2. That was on 11th February 2020. And of course, the name of the disease originated from CO for corona, VI for virus, and D for disease, and 19 being the year in which this virus was detected first, that is December 19. 11th March 2020, the pandemic was declared. It engulfed the whole of the world at that time. We may be knowing very well, India, or for that matter, world had almost 10 to 12 pandemics in the history. That is the recorded history that we are talking of. The first being recorded in 5000 BC. The latest and the last biggest pandemic was Spanish flu in 1918-19, exactly almost 100 years ago. This was the H1N1 virus. Though originated in America, that is United States of America, it was named as Spanish flu because the First World War was going on. And none of the countries in which this pneumonia came, they declared it, except Spain, which was a neutral country. They said we have a pneumonia of unknown origin, and then it was named as Spanish flu. It was such a devastating flu at that time. In Spanish flu, almost 5 crore people died, and more than 1/3 of the world population was infected by Spanish flu. Thereafterwards, we had various SARS in 2003, swine flu in 2009, H1N1 again virus. 2012, we had MERS, that is Middle East Respiratory Syndrome virus, caused by MERS coronavirus. 2014, we had Ebola. This again, virus which was detected in Congo, Ebola river in Congo. So it was called Ebola virus. And lastly, we had Zika virus in 2017, though it was isolated in 1947 in Uganda. The major outbreak it didn't turn out into a pandemic. It remained specific to certain countries, but this Zika virus we had that in Kerala. So it was initially said that the Kerala government was better prepared than any other state government because they had the experience of Zika virus. I will not go into the details of simpler thing like what are the symptoms. The incubation period ranges from 2 to 14. Generally, we do see these symptoms being exhibited on 5th to 7th day. Maharashtra had its first case on 9th March 2020 in Pune. It was a group of travelers which had gone to Middle East, a group of 40 travelers, 3 of them being from Karnataka. Out of those 37 which were from Maharashtra, 17 turned out to be positive, the first being from Pune. Later on, there were almost 9 cases in Pune, including one who was from Nagpur. And apart from that, there were cases in different regions, Nagpur, Yavatmal, Nagar. So the virus spread throughout the state. at that point of time, 9th March. As we know, there are 5 types of symptoms. Based on symptoms and severity of the disease, we classify them into asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic. When the symptoms are not shown, they may be shown at a later time, but at least in the beginning they are not shown. So we say asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic. Then you have mild, then you have moderate, and of course severe and critical. I would not go into details of it what happens in severe, what happens in moderate. Generally in severe, the oxygen saturation drops below 90. In case of moderate, it is between 90 to 94, and in case of mild, it is somewhere around 94. It need not drop below 94. But other symptoms like raised respiration rate, which is generally around 24 in case of mild, moderate, it is raised to almost 30, and in severe cases, more than 30. HRCT score is again an indication wherein we say if it is around 7, we say it's mild, 8 to 17, we say it's moderate, and more than 18, we say it's severe. There are some important lab readings based on which we could detect what is the severity of infection. Because of the constraint of time, it may not be possible for me to go into all the parameters, but NLR, serum protein, ferritin level, D-dimer level, IL-6 level, these are some of the key parameters which could give us an indication about what is the severity of infection and how far severe the infection is. Testing, as you very well know, testing is generally the golden standard, as we call it, RT-PCR test, reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, RT-PCR. In this test, the coronavirus, as you very well know, everyone knows, is a RNA virus, ribonucleic acid virus. A RNA doesn't replicate, the DNA replicates, or it doesn't produce a complementary sequence of it. So generally what is done in this is a DNA sequence, complementary DNA sequence to the RNA that is present in virus is prepared. And this DNA is detected after repeated amplification by fluorescent light so as to confirm the presence of virus. And how many cycles are required of amplification to detect this particular virus or complementary DNA is called the CT value or cyclical threshold value. As per the ICMR standards, if the cyclical threshold comes below 35, the person is declared to be corona positive or COVID positive. If it is more than 35, we say he is negative. RT-PCR is the most standard or golden standard test. Then there are certain rapid antigen tests in which we try to detect the antigen of the virus. And in that, what we do is, in rapid antigen test, though it's a 50% reliable, but the most important thing is it is available in 5 to 10 minutes. Even RT-PCR is 71% reliable. There can be some negative, 29% negative, false negative in RT-PCR as well. In fact, in the second wave, we are finding more negative in RT-PCR. That's mainly because the S gene is being missed. Out of the 4 genes that we try to locate, the S gene is being missed, which is responsible for the spike protein. Because of the double mutation, one of the theories that is being put forward is this spike protein, which are modified, the S gene is not getting detected in RT-PCR. The rapid antigen test is a very fast test, quick test, and gives you an indication, and it cannot be false positive. If you are positive on rapid antigen test, you have it. That's it. Then what generally, apart from that, there is a new test which is being developed by CSIR, that is Feluda test. I'll not go into details of it. Editor linked uniform detection assay is being done. Francisella novicida is the fungi from which it is taken over. And the genome of that particular, or inquiry of genome, that particular genome is done in this test. This test is yet to become a popular test, but this is being introduced by CSIR. CBNAT, which we used to do for TB testing, that was again being used earlier when the rapid antigen test was not there, especially in case of pregnant ladies which required cesarean or some operation so as to rule out that they don't have COVID. Then there is an antibody test. We detect IgM and IgG. IgM, as you know, the earlier antibodies that are detected in the blood. IgG would be developed at a later point. The most important thing that I would like to emphasize here is, whenever you are going for testing, if someone comes positive, the close contacts need to be tested after 4th or 5th day, not the very next day. Because if you do it the very next day, you may go get false negative result. Unless you become symptomatic, you need not go for testing. My own son came positive. So me and my wife went for a testing after 5 days, and then neither we were positive on rapid antigen, neither we were positive on RT-PCR, neither we had any symptoms. If RT-PCR, rapid antigen test is negative and you are symptomatic, then you should definitely go for the RT-PCR test. In second wave, what we are finding out, as I told you initially, the RT-PCR is not coming positive. So how do we detect? So 6-minute walk test, as we call it. Take your pulse oximeter reading before walk, generally from an active hand. If your active hand is right, take it on the middle finger of the active hand. Precaution to be taken, it should not be wet, it should not be too cold. And if you are lefty, on left hand. Generally, the SpO2 would be more than 94. Take a walk test of 6 minutes and again check the reading of the SpO2. If it drops more than 3 points, you need to consult a doctor. In case of old people or people with heart element, the test could be reduced for 3 minutes. They need not go for 6-minute walk test. In addition to that, HRCT score is done. I think wherein you are more authority than me in HRCT that we do, because the radiological examination you do quite often for the fractures to be detected and other things. The 5 lung lobes that are there in body, the involvement of lung lobes. If one lung lobe is involved, it's 5%. Sorry, 5% if the lobe is involved, it's called, score is given 1, 5 to 25, 2, 25 to 53, 50 to 75, 4, and 75 above 5. Add up the score for all the 5, so one can have a maximum score of 25. If it is up to 7, it's a mild involvement of lung. Of course, it has to be correlated with RT-PCR or some other test. Generally, we advise RT-PCR to be repeated in case you are getting a false negative. Moderate 8 to 17 and severe 18 and above. Generally, that's the way we classify the HRCT score. There is also a CORAD score that we call Coronavirus Reporting and Data System. It's basically the same thing, put it in a different way based on your involvement of your lungs. Generally, 3+ CORAD score would give you an indication that the lungs are getting involved and correlate with symptoms, and the RT-PCR, he should be treated as COVID positive. Home isolation is being advised nowadays. So he has to take periodic temperature, 6-minute walk test. The most important thing that I generally tell is about 2D principle in case of home isolation. Whatever goes into the room or the person who is positive staying in the room, whatever goes in has to be, whenever it is coming out, has to be either destroyed or disinfected. And this disinfection could be with sodium hypochlorite solution or soap. And if the utensils are there, best way, if you don't have either of these two, straightway put the boiling water on it. That's the way. And if it is disposable item, destroy it properly as a biomedical waste, considering it as a biomedical waste. Treatments, frankly speaking, there is no panacea drug. रामबाण असं कोणचंच औषध नाहीये. We have been trying ivermectin. We had been trying various antibiotics. Antibiotic generally we do give. Supplementary vitamins we do give. Based on D-dimer results, whether a cytokine storm has been initiated, we do go for anti-inflammatory drugs. It could be tocilizumab, it could be corticosteroids, baricitinib. These are some of the drug of choice which are being used nowadays. And this definitely have given some result, at least in settling the cytokine storm. And of course, the most discussed and most talked about drug, the remdesivir. Remdesivir, two different clinical trials have been conducted, one by the WHO and another by FDA of USA. WHO was a wider or a bigger trial, but not properly designed. It said remdesivir doesn't have any use as far as COVID is concerned. Whereas the FDA trial said it reduces your hospitalization period by 5 to 6 days, in some cases even 7 days. So whether, and remdesivir has a typical mechanism by which it acts. When the virus is replicating in first 9 days, it's a nucleotide replacement medicine which stops the multiplication of virus, and therefore it reduces the viral load an individual is likely to have, and therefore it reduces your stay in hospital. But one thing for sure, remdesivir will be of no use after day 10, because the virus is already out of your replication phase, and therefore remdesivir has to be used with a caution. Secondly, because remdesivir reduces patients' stay in hospital, it has become more popular or more important because we are seeing the situation of oxygen, that is availability of oxygen. Maharashtra is requiring almost around 1700 to 1800 metric tons of oxygen, whereas our production capacity is to the tune of 10 to 1200. And therefore, any reduction in oxygen utilization may be remdesivir or some other mechanism. Therefore, we are advising not to use high flow nozzle cannula. Instead, go for BiPAP and use it. That's the way we are advising, and conserve whatever oxygen we have. And because we are seeing how the situation is throughout the India because of masking, because of the shortage of oxygen. I will not go into different Verapine and some other drugs are being, in fact, today only there is one more drug which has been introduced as an emergency use authorization. But all these drugs are yet to go through evidence-based clinical trials. Until it happens, we may not know exactly which drugs are the panacea for COVID. As of now, none. So what do? We have to go for more emphasis has to be on prevention rather than cure. Simple thing, as we repeatedly tell, use mask. Mask, surgical mask, N95 mask, and of course cloth mask. Cloth mask, I I generally advise not to use it, especially so in second wave, because we are having this virus, which is double mutant, 452 and 484, which is making it highly infectious and it is evading the immune system of an individual. And therefore, we are finding it spreading very high, in a very high proportion. And therefore, cloth mask is not advisable. In fact, nowadays, new theory is coming up, use double masking, especially so in your cases, you do visit hospitals where it is advised to go for double masking, which would prevent you from a likely exposure rather than using a cloth mask. In routine course, yes, cloth mask or surgical mask was enough. Bare minimum yet that you should go for is N95, nothing less than N95, because you all are doctors and exposed to various patients, and you never know, there would be some asymptomatic patients. Then we insist for washing of hands, which you are quite conversant with, which you regularly follow before your surgery. But for a common man, he has to be told why soap. What is the importance of soap? The outer covering of this particular virus is made of lipid and protein. The soap would destroy the lipid and break it open and will kill the virus. That one has to explain, because adult learning process is something different, which is not like a child. A child would listen to what his parent will say, but an adult wouldn't. He would ask why do that way, why it has to be done. So better explain them. Same thing sanitizer does. And of course, always front, between, from the back side, the knuckles or the nails, and lastly your wrist. So all these will have to be washed, and at least for 40 seconds, minimum 40 seconds. Social and physical distancing, we do talk of keeping at least 6 feet apart the distance of this particular virus. The size of the virus is 2 nanomicrons, 2.59. Practically, this virus is carried through droplets, and therefore a distance of 6 feet, unprotected 6 feet contact would invite infection. But if both are using mask, the chances are very less, in fact, but the distance will have to be kept of minimum 6 feet apart. And that's the way one should be doing it. As you very well know, this social and physical distancing and this particular virus, therefore the maximum infection, I repeatedly tell everybody, is from the known contacts or the one who is close to you. He could be your relative, he could be your guest. And therefore avoid socializing, keep a distance, don't call even your relatives, your close ones, better talk on Zoom or something else. But only the people in your bio bubble, that is your family, which are a part of your bio bubble, those only can come in contact with you who are in contact with you for 24 hours. You may be knowing what happened in IPL. The bio bubble was broken and the people got infected and had to be postponed. The IPL had to be postponed. Second wave, why did it come? It started somewhere at the end of February. In fact, in February, I had toured Yavatma, Amravati, Akola, where the cases were rising, Chandrapur, Nagpur. I had a long tour of that area, and there I found that people getting repeatedly infected. At that point of time, only I had advised go for genome sequencing. And then we came to know that there are two mutants, L452R and E484Q. E484Q is responsible for escaping immunity, and L452R increases the infectivity. And as I said, the vaccination was being introduced, and everybody thought now COVID is finished. It's the vaccination which would take care, and we don't have to bother much. So marriages, parties, dining out, everything started. And with this double mutation, it spread like a wildfire. the rate at which it grew was 5 times more than the last time that we had. So we have to be very careful when we are talking of this second wave. This is very rapidly spreading. And as you know, the only way to stop it could be the vaccination. 75%, more than 70 to 75% vaccination. As you know, right now, Seychelles and Maldives, these are two countries which have done almost 60% vaccination, followed by Israel, which has done around 50, 55 to 59. So these are the countries which are now going towards the herd immunity. And therefore, that is the one which we will have to go up to. Unfortunately, we are not having enough vaccine with us. Covaxin, Covishield, and Sputnik is being introduced. Covaxin, as you know, is an inactivated virus. Covishield is a recombinant of chimpanzee adenovirus. We have done a recombinant DNA technique. It's a vector encoding. The spike protein antigen of SARS-CoV-2 has been introduced in chimpanzee adenovirus, which acts as a vector or like a vehicle for that matter. Then Serum also is trying to bring out Covax, the new vaccine, which is yet to come in. But right now we have Covaxin, Covishield, and Sputnik 5. Sputnik 5 has human adenovirus. It's again a vector-based virus, but there are two viruses. For first jab, it's another one, and for second jab, it's another one. Pfizer and Moderna, both are mRNA vaccine, so therefore not stable, and you have to keep them at -70. Johnson & Johnson, now called Janssen, their collaborators or with their company only, they are coming with another vaccine, which is only single jab vaccine. That's in USA. We have Zydus Cadila, which is likely to come in soon. But the production capacity that we have will take at least, as I was discussing, maybe more than a year if we go for vaccination at a rate of 5 lakhs. This is, I'm talking in context of Maharashtra. When we talk of India, it's still a bigger magnitude. So availability of vaccine will decide when this COVID will finish or when we'll be able to control it. There is a lot of misconception about the vaccine. People say, "Arey, vaccine lene ke baad bhi ho gaya." It will be there. You will have infection, but you may not have disease. I mean, the severe disease. Because Covishield, they said, first doses we had given 10 crores, out of which 17,145 came positive. The proportion of positiveness is 0.02. After second dose, 1.57 crores, 5,000 came positive. The positivity after the second dose is 0.03%. Covaxin, again, same 0.04 and 0.04. And this is what is happening even in USA. But the most important thing is people are not dying out of COVID. They don't require hospitalization after vaccination. And therefore, the best thing is take the vaccine which is available now rather than waiting for a better vaccine to come. So take the vaccine. First vaccine and second jab. In case of Covishield, it is 6 to 8 weeks, which is likely to be revised to 12 weeks as in Europe. Covaxin we do take after 4 weeks. So these are the two vaccines which we'll be using. The vaccine only will stop the COVID, the herd immunity, and then it may continue. The COVID may continue as SARS or other going at, but that would be just in an endemic area, in a small area. The next thing that one should be worrying about is long COVID or post-COVID complication. Fungal infection, as you know, mucormycosis, Candida, aspergillosis. When the patient is on oxygen and humidified oxygen, if the water is not taken care of, may introduce the fungal infection. And the death ratio because of fungal infection is very, very high. When it gets infected and goes into, mostly it affects your nervous system, and the death rate could be as high as 50% or 85%. There is a possibility of heart disease, damages to heart muscle after COVID, kidney disease, brain stroke, temporary paralysis, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, diabetes, psychological problems, and some common symptoms of COVID may continue forever, like fatigue, nervousness. Blood clots is also a complication that we are finding out, thrombus getting there into blood circulation. Insomnia is also seen. I think I have tried to cover as fast as I can. Generally, I speak on this for more than an hour, but because of time constraint, I have tried to go as fast as I can. That's in short, I have to tell you about COVID-19. We are going ahead with some more things. Yesterday only I had a meeting with the state government, the Chief Secretary, Honorable Chief Secretary. We are insisting for genome sequencing, and that's what would be carried out. In case there is a mutation in third wave, we must know where it is coming up. And if that mutation comes up, how do we tackle it? Because we don't know how the mutant would be, whether it would affect the children, whether it would affect the young ones, whether it would affect the elder ones, we don't know. But we need to keep a watch through genome sequencing, and that's what we are. Already we have almost 5 variants: B117 British variant, B1135 South African variant, E484Q and L452R as the double mutants, N4450 Kerala variant, P1 Brazilian variant. So we need to be very cautious. So we are trying to, till then, COVID appropriate behavior will only save us. And that's the only solution. And I think that would be the proper way of saluting those who had led their lives, the doctors, the paramedicos, the frontline workers, the sanitation workers, and those who lost their lives because of COVID. The only way we should pay them tribute is having or behaving in COVID appropriate behavior. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for enlightening us on COVID-19, and especially in the view of second wave. What are the points, how to go ahead with? Thank you very much for your guidance. Sir, I have two, 3 points to tell on this occasion. One is the patient education. Unless and until the last person in the society is educated or aware about this COVID, we are not going to succeed, because whatever the things you are told, most of the educated people are up to certain level of the community they know. But unless and until we reach to the last person, because it is not that I am safe, so everybody will safe. So if we educate them, that is the one. Second is the involvement of the political, social, and spiritual leaders, because few of the communities, we are not blaming anybody, but few of the communities, they don't follow whatever your COVID proper behavior. So we have to teach, or we have to guide their spiritual leaders, political leaders in particular area. And if they guide their people, they will listen more. That is what we think. Then counseling, as you said, is very important for patients as well as to the community and sufferers who are there. And the strict action on any type of malpractice is very much I think needed at this stage, because whatever if you say remdesivir or oxygen lack, etc., there must be a stringent action on vaccine. Of course, you are enlightened more on vaccine, importance of vaccine. And one thing is that institutional isolation versus home isolation. If we allow home isolation, there are chances that whole of the family may get infected. Instead, if we can arrange at the gully, mohalla, or the ward level, institutional isolations, or in the Samaj Mandir or everywhere, and where we can observe, then these cases which are increasing in the family, one person in the family comes positive, the entire family comes positive in the next 4 or 5 days or 10 days. So that we can avoid by corporations or NGOs so that the number of positive cases will be reduced. So these are few of my thoughts on this. So maybe may not be. So anybody, any question having?
I think Mangala Borkar madam has put up a
Yeah.
question in chat box.
Yeah, Borkar madam.
Yes.
She's a-
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, please
Thank you
go
very
ahead.
much for that excellent talk. And one thing which I wanted to humbly suggest to you that, sir, those who can afford should buy the vaccines, but they should pay for the vaccines, but we should buy at whatever cost we get and whichever company we get. That is a humble request, because that is the only thing which may prevent the third wave, or at least decrease it. So what is the policy at present of the government? Government wants to give free.
See, what has happened is the policies of COVID vaccine pricing is decided by Government of India. But as you rightly said, the state government could have given the option of paying by the persons concerned. But the biggest issue as of now is the availability of vaccine itself. I already discussed this with Chief Secretary. We are likely to come out, but I can't commit it at this point of stage. But we are likely to come out with a policy wherein, as we do waive off our subsidy on gas cylinder, this pricing will be given a choice. I mean, a person would be given a choice.
Yes,
that
sir.
he should pay from his own pocket. Even a person like me, I can pay from my own pocket. I don't have to wait for the government vaccination to come
True,
in.
sir. True.
But yes, this is being considered. There are certain decisions which are political, about which we have certain limitations. We can only suggest, but the decision is ultimately taken by them. Someone has asked here, if I am not wrong, Ashok Sham.
Ashok Sharma has asked, yeah.
Yeah.
Please share the insights on reinfection rate of the COVID-19.
Yes, reinfection rate of COVID-19, there are two ways of looking at it. When we say reinfection, it has to be after 90 days. Otherwise, we do presume that the original infection, the first infection itself was there in the body which had remained latent and it had flared up at a later stage. But if it is a COVID case after 3 months, yes, you have the reinfection of COVID. It can be very well confirmed, but the issue is what has happened. I mean, that's what I was to speak in detail about. In Yavatmal, Akola and Amravati, there were so many cases of reinfection, but the earlier sample of RT-PCR was not preserved, and therefore the genome of the earlier sample, the virus of the earlier sample and the present infection could not be matched. It was only in Yavatmal sample we could match those, and we could find that it's a different virus or a mutant. And therefore, if it's a mutant, then yes, it's a reinfection. But the details or figures, there are many cases now we are finding out that the people are getting reinfected with this virus, the mutant one. But exact numbers I may not be having right now with me.
Sir, yesterday we have talked by Dr. Shiv Kumar Iyer, and the same question about reinfection was asked. So being an expert in that field, he told that we did not have to worry about the reinfection rate because it is very less, and the chances of getting infected after having achieved the immunity are very less. So reinfection as such, as on today, as per his opinion also, is not a big issue than other issues.
Yeah, the number is less, and secondly, the virulence or the exhibition of symptoms is
Symptoms,
also.
yeah. So any other question, Shinde sir? President sir?
Sir has explained everything very nicely. It was a wonderful experience.
Thank you, thank you.
Sir has given us detailed picture of this corona pandemic, right from history, investigation, then detection of the cases, staging of the disease, management according to the staging, and how to prevention. So everything almost he has discussed. I think with such a bureaucrats, politician might be having enough ideas regarding the disease and how to control it. The only thing is that even everyone should have his responsibility, how I should contribute to control. Otherwise, what is happening? सगळ्या लोकांचं म्हणणं आहे की सगळं सरकारनंच करावं. आता जर का तुम्ही शांतपणे सगळं ऐकलं तर इनफ ही हॅज गिव्हन आयडिया की व्हॉट ही इज नोईंग, व्हॉट दे आर डुईंग, अँड हाऊ दे आर ट्राईंग टू डिटेक्ट द केसेस, how they are trying to prevent the disease, and how they are trying to control the disease. Even they are planning to control next तिसरी लाट सुद्धा कंट्रोल करायचा प्रयत्न करतात. म्हणजे आपण जे समजतो शासन काही करत नाहीये, पण शासन हातावर हात बनून बसलं हे चुकीचं आहे. दे आर हॅव्हिंग ऑल्सो देअर प्लॅन्स अँड दे आर डुईंग ॲट देअर बेस्ट. बट त्यांनी सांगितलंच आहे आपली एवढी पॉप्युलेशन आणि गोष्टी एवढ्या अपुऱ्या आहेत की ह्याचा ताळमेळ घालायचं म्हणजे 2 वर्ष लागतं. तर ते 2 वर्षाचं 1 वर्ष 6 महिन्यात कसं आणायचा ते प्रयत्न करणारच आहेत. ते सांगण्यात आपण डबल डोस करूया, 5 लाखाचं 10 लाख करूया, पण करायचं म्हणलं तर पुन्हावाला म्हणतोच एका दिवसात काय एवढ्या वॅक्सिन तयार होणार आहेत का? तर हे सगळं विचारात घेतलं, हे खरोखरच आव्हान आहे. आपण सगळेजण मिळून ह्याच्यात कॉन्ट्रीब्युट करून ला हरवायचा प्रयत्न करूया. हाऊ वी विल विन सेकंड वेव्ह ऑफ द कोरोना. थँक्स.
Parag sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Excellent talk, sir. Very enlightening. Lot of practical points. I just have one quick question. I know you have to go, but just one question, sir. So there is a lot of thing on this mutation and remutation, and the vaccine which was created was for the first mutation, the first type of virus. But yet we are seeing that the patients, the people who have taken the virus are protected to a large extent. The intensity of the disease is less. But do you think it is sufficient, or it is of no use now, or in the future? Of course, you talked about vaccination and there's a program, but if it mutates again, do you think it will not be useful? So 2 questions. So will it the utility and the efficacy of the vaccine, and in the future, if there's a third mutation, what happens?
A very nice question. In fact, what is happening is, you probably may be knowing, we already have a pneumonia vaccine. This pneumonia vaccine, every year it is done in UK and other countries. They do have every year pneumonia vaccine. And why it is done every year is because pneumonia virus is again a RNA virus. They mutate very fast, and therefore we will have to have this vaccination at least for another few years. And every time, as Dr. Shinde was saying initially, maybe we would be due for vaccination again after a year. By that time, this mutant, whatever mutants are developed, if those are detected, those would be incorporated in the virus process or the vaccine production process. And that would give us an immunity against all possible mutants. But yes, we are yet to go in that direction. But already Pfizer and Moderna, they are saying about it, because fortunately, this virus, the double mutant, has not yet gone into most of the foreign countries. UK, they have detected some, but not to that scale. But They will have to incorporate all these viruses or mutants in future, and it could become something like an annual program of pneumonia vaccination, as we are having probably COVID vaccination. That will have
That will be like an ongoing basis, yearly basis.
Correct.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Excellent talk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for being.
Thank you. I'll leave with your permission then.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.